The first time my sister-in-law stole one of my baby's names, I convinced myself it had to be a coincidence. The second time, I realized it wasn't. By the third time, she wasn't even trying to hide what she was doing anymore. She wanted me to suffer. And years later, when I finally became pregnant again, she made sure my nightmare wasn't over. What she didn't realize was that every cruel message, every fake smile, every disgusting little game she played was creating the evidence that would eventually destroy her entire life. For years, I wasn't simply a woman struggling with infertility. I became the woman everyone felt sorry for. 3 different pregnancies had ended the same way. Each one made it well into the second trimester, before everything suddenly fell apart. Every appointment began with hope and ended with silence. Every nursery idea turned into another storage box hidden in the attic, because I couldn't bear to throw anything away. The first miscarriage almost broke me completely. I remember sitting on the floor of my living room, unable to stop crying, while family members came and went with flowers, casseroles, and empty promises that someday everything would be okay. Most people genuinely tried to comfort me. One person stood out more than anyone else. My sister-in-law, Sarah. She wrapped her arms around me, brushed my hair away from my face, and whispered that I would never go through any of this alone. "You'll always have me," she said. I believed her. I actually believed we were becoming sisters, instead of simply relatives through marriage. She called me every few days, checked on me, asked how therapy was going, even invited me shopping when I needed distractions. When she found out she was pregnant herself, she looked almost guilty telling me the news. I didn't want you hearing it from someone else. I hugged her. I cried. But they were happy tears. Despite everything I'd lost, I still wanted good things for the people I loved. She thanked me over and over for being so supportive. When she told me I would become her baby's godmother, I nearly cried again. For a little while, it felt like life was finally giving me something back. Then came her baby shower. The house was covered in pink decorations. Friends and relatives filled every room. People laughed while opening gifts, guessing baby names and taking pictures. Toward the end of the afternoon, Sarah stood beside the cake with one hand resting on her stomach. We finally picked the perfect name. Everyone leaned forward. "So," she smiled proudly, "our little girl will be named Faith." The room exploded with applause. Mine went completely silent. Faith. The exact name my husband and I had whispered to each other every night after losing our daughter. We had never announced it publicly. Only immediate family knew. Only people we trusted. The air disappeared from my lungs. For a few seconds, all I could hear was my own heartbeat. I waited until everyone became distracted before pulling Sarah aside. My voice barely worked. "Why that name?" She looked at me with complete innocence. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." Her smile faded into something colder. "Oh." She shrugged. "It isn't like you're ever going to use it." For a moment, I couldn't even respond. She said it so casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. As if my daughter had never existed. I stared at her, expecting some sign she regretted saying it. Instead, she laughed softly. "It's just a name, Emma." My husband walked over after noticing my expression. "Everything okay?" Before I could answer, Sarah smiled sweetly. "We were just talking about baby names." I told him what she'd said. He frowned for a second, but then looked uncomfortable. "I mean..." He scratched the back of his neck. "Maybe she didn't mean it that way." Sarah immediately nodded. "Exactly. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I wanted him to defend me. Instead, he tried to keep the peace. That was who Daniel had always been. He grew up in a family where arguing only made things worse. His solution to every conflict was hoping it would disappear on its own. The drive home was painfully quiet. Finally, I asked him, "Do you honestly think that was an accident?" He sighed. "No. But maybe she just doesn't understand how much it hurts." I looked out the passenger window. She understood perfectly. Neither of us spoke again for the rest of the drive. Eventually, I convinced myself to let it go. I told myself that maybe hearing the name would become easier over time. Maybe seeing another little girl carry it would somehow honor the daughter I never got to meet. I needed to believe that. Otherwise, the pain would have consumed me. So I focused on healing. Therapy, healthy eating, doctors, hormone treatments, Pilates classes, supplements, specialists. Every recommendation anyone offered, I tried. I refused to give up. 18 months later, I saw 2 pink lines again. For the first time in a long while, hope returned. Daniel cried when I showed him the test. We promised each other we wouldn't tell anyone until we were safely past the dangerous months. This time had to be different. This time, we believed our miracle was finally coming. For the first few months, everything looked perfect. Every ultrasound brought another wave of relief. Every heartbeat sounded stronger than the last. I stopped letting myself imagine the worst every waking minute. Daniel noticed it too. "You smiled today," he said one evening while we were making dinner. I haven't seen that smile in a long time. I laughed. I almost forgot what it felt like. We still kept the pregnancy private. Only our doctor knew. Not our parents. Not our friends. Definitely not Sarah. I couldn't explain why, but I didn't trust her with something this fragile. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was trauma. Either way, I wanted to protect this baby from every possible source of bad luck. Around the 20th week, our doctor smiled after another successful appointment. "So far, everything looks excellent." Those words felt almost unreal. Excellent. Nobody had ever used that word during one of my pregnancies before. For the first time in years, Daniel and I stopped by a small baby boutique on the drive home. We didn't buy much. A tiny blanket, a pair of white socks, a stuffed elephant no bigger than my hand. The cashier smiled. "First baby." I looked at Daniel. He squeezed my fingers. "I hope so." That night, we placed everything inside a small dresser in what would hopefully become our nursery. Neither of us spoke. We simply stood there, looking at those tiny clothes, almost afraid that saying the wrong thing would make them disappear. A few weeks later, everything changed again. Not because of my pregnancy. Because of Sarah. I was standing in line at Walgreens, picking up vitamins when my phone buzzed. Sarah had posted another photo. Normally, I ignored her social media. That day, curiosity won. The picture showed her newborn son sleeping peacefully. His tiny blanket was embroidered with one word: James. My knees nearly gave out. James. Another name Daniel and I had chosen. Another baby we had buried without ever getting to hold. Then I read the caption. "Thank you for the name inspiration, Emma. Some blessings simply find the right family." Followed by a laughing emoji. And a skull. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. People continued walking around me, while I stood frozen in the middle of the pharmacy aisle. An older woman accidentally bumped my shoulder. "Oh, excuse me." I barely heard her. I drove home in complete silence. When Daniel came through the front door after work, he found me sitting at the kitchen table staring at my phone. He didn't even need to ask. It was Sarah again. I handed him the screen. He read the caption. His jaw tightened. Finally. For the first time, I actually saw anger on his face. That's... He stopped himself. I'll call her. No. I shook my head. She'll just pretend it's a joke. Emma. I'm tired. Not angry. Not crying. Just exhausted. He sat beside me. I'm sorry. I should have done something the first time. I wanted to believe things would change after that conversation. Instead, Sarah became even worse. Every holiday somehow included another comment. Every family dinner included another little joke that everyone else pretended not to hear. If someone asked whether Daniel and I planned to have children, Sarah would answer before I could. They're still trying. Then she'd laugh. If at first you don't succeed. Nobody laughed with her. But nobody stopped her either. Silence became permission. Eventually, I stopped attending most family gatherings. It was easier to stay home than spend an evening pretending insults didn't hurt. Then came my third miscarriage. That one destroyed whatever optimism I still had left. I didn't even cry immediately. I simply stared at the hospital ceiling while the doctor quietly explained there had been nothing anyone could have done. I'd heard those words before. They meant nothing anymore. Daniel held my hand the entire drive home. Neither of us spoke. There weren't any words left. The funeral was private. Just the two of us. No family. No flowers. No speeches. Afterward, I packed away another tiny memory box. Another ultrasound picture. Another pair of unworn baby socks. Another future that would never happen. A week later, my phone buzzed. Another message from Sarah. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a picture of a beautifully decorated nursery. Pink walls. White crib. Stuffed animals. The caption read, "Bet your Charlotte would have loved this room." I dropped the phone onto the couch as if it had burned me. Charlotte. Our third baby's name. She knew exactly what she was doing. Daniel came downstairs after hearing me crying. He picked up my phone. His face went pale. He didn't say a single word. He simply blocked Sarah's number. Then he blocked every social media account she owned. I don't care what Mom says anymore. I'm done defending her. I wanted to believe that would finally be the end. Instead, Sarah found new ways. She made comments through relatives, posted vague messages online, shared photos designed to remind me of everything I'd lost. Years passed. Almost 4. Eventually, I stopped buying pregnancy tests. Stopped tracking ovulation. Stopped imagining nurseries. People quietly stopped asking when we'd have children. Friends who once checked on me every week slowly disappeared into their own busy lives. Even my therapist gently suggested I begin thinking about what a meaningful future might look like without becoming a mother. I nodded. I even pretended to agree. But every night, after Daniel fell asleep, I'd place one hand over my stomach and wonder why my body kept failing me. Then one evening, we attended another family dinner. Sarah was pregnant again. Her 4th child. She spent most of dinner making jokes about names. I should probably ask Emma first. The table chuckled awkwardly. She smirked. Never know what beautiful names she'll come up with next. Everyone looked away. Nobody challenged her. Nobody told her to stop. That was the exact moment something inside me finally changed. For years, I'd been reacting. Crying. Avoiding. Forgiving. Trying to be the bigger person. I was done. If Sarah loved stealing names so much, maybe it was finally time someone gave her a name she would regret for the rest of her life. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Sarah's smug grin over and over in my head. Every cruel joke, every stolen baby name, every family dinner where everyone acted like her behavior was completely normal. By sunrise, I had made a decision. If she wanted another name so badly, I was going to hand her one she'd never forget. Over the next several days, I built my little plan piece by piece. It had to look believable. Not almost believable. Completely convincing. I dug through old family photographs, searched boxes in our attic, and even bought an antique-looking journal from a thrift store. Then I spent hours carefully aging the pages with tea and lightly wrinkling the paper until it looked decades old. I even practiced my story in front of the bathroom mirror. If Sarah suspected anything, the whole idea would fall apart. A week later, our family gathered for another Sunday dinner. I waited until everyone had finished eating. Then I quietly pulled Sarah aside. I found something. She immediately looked interested. What? I was going through Mom's old things. I lowered my voice. I found one of her journals. Sarah's eyes lit up. What was inside? I hesitated just long enough to make it seem difficult. There was something she never told anyone. What? A middle name. She frowned. A middle name. I nodded. Apparently Grandma gave Mom a secret family name that had been passed down for generations. Sarah leaned closer. What was it? I whispered it like it carried some sacred meaning. Lexativa. She blinked. I've never heard that before. Nobody has. I carefully unfolded one of the fake journal pages I'd prepared. My mom wrote that it meant sacred child in an ancient dialect. Sarah slowly took the page. She studied every word. I could practically see the wheels turning inside her head. It sounds beautiful. I know. I almost wanted to save it for. I stopped myself halfway through the sentence. She noticed. You were going to use it. I looked down. Maybe someday. That was all she needed. People like Sarah loved taking things they believed someone else wanted. The moment she thought the name mattered to me, it became valuable. Over the next month, I casually mentioned it a few more times. Never pushing. Never overselling it. Just enough to let the idea grow inside her head. I even showed her a fake Pinterest board I'd made about honoring grandparents through meaningful family names. She completely bought it. Daniel watched the whole thing unfold with equal parts confusion and amusement. You really think she's going to use it? I smiled. You don't understand your sister as well as I do. Sure enough, 2 months later she made her big announcement. The entire family had gathered for another baby shower. Pink decorations covered every wall. There were balloons, flowers, gifts stacked halfway to the ceiling, and dozens of guests taking pictures for Sarah's parenting blog. She absolutely loved being the center of attention. Halfway through opening presents, she stood up and tapped her glass. I have something special to share. Everyone immediately looked at her. She placed one hand dramatically over her stomach. We've finally decided on our daughter's name. The room filled with excited whispers. Sarah smiled proudly. Her name will be Lexativa Rose. Several people politely clapped. A few relatives smiled. Others looked confused. My mother-in-law frowned slightly. That's unusual. Sarah beamed. It's a sacred family name. She looked directly at me. Emma actually inspired it. I forced a smile. I'm honored. Inside, I almost burst out laughing. Everything had worked exactly as planned. For the first time in years, Sarah had stolen something that would eventually embarrass only herself. I figured that was enough. I honestly believed I'd finally gotten a little harmless revenge. Life, however, had very different plans. About 8 months later, something happened that neither Daniel nor I had dared imagine anymore. I was pregnant. Not just pregnant. 29 weeks pregnant. Every doctor's appointment had gone perfectly. Every scan looked healthy. Every milestone we'd never reached before had come and gone, without a single complication. I still woke up every morning, terrified something would be wrong. But every appointment proved otherwise. Our doctor finally smiled after another ultrasound. "I think it's time you both start believing this baby is coming home." I cried all the way to the parking lot. Daniel cried before we even reached the elevator. For years, we'd only imagined heartbreak. Now we were being handed hope. Even then, we kept everything secret. We'd learned not to celebrate too early. Not because we weren't excited. Because we were afraid. Fear had become part of every pregnancy we'd ever experienced. Finally, once we reached 29 weeks, Daniel looked at me one evening. "I think we can tell everyone now." I placed both hands over my stomach. "I think so too." A few days later, Sarah invited everyone to yet another extravagant baby shower. Apparently, she'd spent months documenting baby Lexitiva's journey for thousands of followers on her parenting blog. Perfect. Neither of us mentioned my pregnancy before arriving. I wore a loose dress that hid my stomach surprisingly well. Sarah barely looked at me when we walked in. She was too busy posing for photos and accepting compliments. The party was enormous. Friends, neighbors, extended relatives. Even people who only knew Sarah through social media had shown up. She absolutely loved the attention. Daniel quietly leaned toward me. "Ready?" I nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." About an hour later, Sarah stood in front of everyone, giving another dramatic speech. She talked about motherhood, family traditions, sacred names. Then she proudly began telling everyone the touching story behind Lexitiva. That was my moment. I slowly stood up. "Actually," the room became quiet. "I have something I'd like to share too." Every face turned toward me. Sarah paused mid-sentence. I gently rested both hands across my stomach. Then I stepped forward. "I'm 29 weeks pregnant." For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Then I pulled my loose dress tight enough for everyone to finally see the unmistakable baby bump. The room exploded. People jumped to their feet. My mother-in-law burst into tears before she even reached me. She wrapped me in the biggest hug I'd had in years. "Oh my God, Emma, really?" I laughed through my own tears. "Really?" She kept touching my shoulders like she needed proof I was actually standing there. "I've prayed for this every single day." Around us, relatives started clapping and congratulating us. Some came over to hug Daniel. Others rushed to hug me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the woman everyone pitied. I was finally the one receiving good news. The only person who wasn't smiling was Sarah. She looked like someone had drained every drop of color from her face. Her mouth hung slightly open, but no words came out. Daniel slowly stood beside me. For years, he'd stayed quiet whenever his sister crossed the line. Not anymore. He looked directly at Sarah. "Weren't you just explaining the meaning of Lexitiva?" She blinked. "What?" "The name. You said it had some ancient family history." She forced a nervous laugh. "Well, yes." Daniel pulled out his phone. "That's strange." He started tapping the screen. "I searched for it this morning." Sarah suddenly looked uneasy. "What are you talking about?" He turned the phone so everyone nearby could see. "Every result says Lexitiva is a constipation medicine." Silence. Absolute silence. Someone near the back let out a small snort. Another person tried to hide a laugh. Then Uncle Greg completely lost it. He laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his drink. Sarah's eyes became enormous. No. She grabbed her own phone. Her fingers moved frantically across the screen. Within seconds, her expression completely collapsed. Every search result showed the exact same thing. Medical websites, laxatives, constipation relief. Nothing about ancient family names. Nothing about sacred children. My father-in-law rubbed his forehead. So, you named your daughter after a laxative. A few relatives burst into laughter. Others tried desperately not to. Sarah stared directly at me. You lied to me. I shrugged. I never forced you to steal it. You set me up. You've been taking names that weren't yours for years. She stepped closer. You planned this. I gave you a story. You decided to make it your daughter's identity. Her breathing became heavier. I trusted you. I almost laughed. You trusted me. You mocked 3 of my dead babies. The room became quiet again. Nobody had a comeback for that. Not even Sarah. Daniel gently placed his hand on my back. We're leaving. Neither of us waited for permission. As we walked toward the exit, I glanced back once. Sarah was still standing in the middle of the room, staring at her phone, while several guests quietly whispered behind her. Her perfect baby shower had completely fallen apart. For the first time in years, she was the one being laughed at. I honestly thought that would be the end of everything. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 weeks later, I woke up around 4 in the morning with a sharp pain across my stomach. Instantly, I knew. Every woman who's lived through multiple miscarriages knows the difference between ordinary discomfort and the kind of pain that changes your life forever. I grabbed Daniel's arm. He woke immediately. Emma. Something in my face told him everything. He was already pulling on his clothes before I even answered. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us needed to. We'd made that drive before. Too many times. The emergency staff rushed me inside. Doctors moved quickly. Nurses asked questions I barely heard. I already knew. About an hour later, the doctor quietly sat beside my bed. I'm so sorry. The words shattered whatever hope I'd been clinging to. Our baby was gone. Again. Daniel broke down completely. I'd only seen him cry once before. This was different. He buried his face in my shoulder while both of us fell apart together. When we finally returned home, the nursery looked exactly the way we'd left it. Tiny clothes. Little stuffed elephant. Folded baby blanket. Everything waiting for a child who would never come home. I couldn't even step inside the room. Days passed in a blur. People called. Sent flowers. Dropped off meals. I barely noticed. Then something strange happened. Daniel found the empty bottle of my prenatal vitamins sitting outside in our trash bin. He frowned. I thought these were almost full. They were. He turned the bottle over. The label looked normal. The seal looked untouched. Still, something felt wrong. Then both of us remembered something at exactly the same time. Sarah had visited our house 2 days before everything happened. She'd insisted on helping organize the nursery. She'd spent almost 20 minutes upstairs by herself. Back then, I hadn't thought anything about it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Daniel slowly looked at me. You don't think? I do. He didn't answer. Because deep down, he was thinking the exact same thing. Neither of us wanted to believe it. Accusing someone of deliberately harming an unborn baby wasn't something you did without proof. But the more we talked about it, the less it felt like a coincidence. Sarah had been inside our house. She knew exactly where I kept my prenatal vitamins. She'd insisted on helping, while Daniel carried furniture downstairs. For nearly half an hour, she'd been upstairs completely alone. At the time, I'd actually thanked her. Now that memory made my stomach turn. We contacted the police the next morning. The officer listened carefully while we explained everything. He asked about the vitamins, the nursery, Sarah's visit. Then he sighed. "I'm very sorry for your loss. But without the bottle or laboratory evidence, there's not much we can prove." Daniel handed him the empty container we'd found. The officer examined it before shaking his head. "There's no obvious sign it was tampered with. The hospital couldn't identify what had caused the miscarriage either. Whatever had happened left almost no trace. Legally, we had nothing. Emotionally, we knew exactly who we'd been thinking about every single day." For the first time since we'd gotten married, Daniel didn't defend his sister. Not once. Instead, he sat beside me at our kitchen table, staring at that empty bottle for nearly an hour. Finally, he whispered, "I should have believed you years ago." I reached across the table and took his hand. "This isn't your fault." "It is." I kept making excuses. I kept telling myself she didn't mean it. "I let you face her alone." His voice cracked. "I'll never forgive myself." That night, we decided something had to change. If the police couldn't build a case, we'd start collecting everything ourselves. Every message. Every social media post. Every cruel joke. Every strange coincidence. Everything. I bought a large storage box and started organizing folders. Screenshots. Photos. Printed text messages. Dates. Times. Names. The more I looked back, the more obvious Sarah's pattern became. None of it had ever been random. She always waited until people weren't paying attention. She smiled while she hurt people, then acted shocked when anyone called her out. About 3 weeks after the miscarriage, I uncovered something that made my blood run cold. Sarah's best friend, Catherine, worked at the exact pharmacy where I filled all my prescriptions. I suddenly remembered dozens of little moments that hadn't seemed important before. Catherine always asked strangely personal questions. "What medication are you taking now? Still using those vitamins? How far along are you?" At the time, I'd assumed she was simply making conversation. Now every question felt different. The next afternoon, I drove to the pharmacy. Catherine spotted me almost immediately. The smile disappeared from her face. She quickly turned toward the back room. "Catherine." She froze. "I just need to ask you something." She slowly faced me again. "What?" "My prenatal vitamins." She swallowed hard. "I don't know anything about your vitamins. I never said someone changed them." For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Then she forced another smile. "I really have to get back to work." She hurried away before I could ask another question. That reaction told me far more than any answer ever could. That evening, Sarah posted another entry on her parenting blog. She never mentioned my name directly. She didn't have to. She wrote about toxic relatives who created fake stories because they couldn't accept other people's happiness. Thousands of strangers flooded the comments. They called the mysterious family member jealous, bitter, attention-seeking. Within hours, my own social media accounts filled with hateful messages. Complete strangers called me crazy. Some accused me of inventing my pregnancies. Others claimed I was trying to destroy a happy family. I shut my laptop. Then I turned off my phone. Daniel quietly deleted every one of his social media accounts. "I'm done giving these people access to us," For several days, we barely left the house. It felt like the entire internet had chosen Sarah's side. Then my mother-in-law called. She sounded exhausted. "Can we please stop all this fighting?" I closed my eyes. "What fighting?" "You and Sarah. She says you've been accusing her of terrible things." "I haven't accused anyone publicly." "Then why are people talking?" I wanted to tell her everything. About the vitamins. About Catherine. About my suspicions. Instead, I simply asked one question. Has Sarah ever admitted doing anything wrong? Silence. Then, no. That's all I needed to know. A week later, another family dinner was scheduled. Daniel didn't want to go. Neither did I. But his mother begged us. "Please. This family is falling apart." Against our better judgment. We went. The moment we walked inside, I realized Sarah had planned every detail. Right in the middle of the dining room sat baby Lexitiva's bassinet. The embroidered name was impossible to miss. Every time I looked up from my plate, that ridiculous name stared right back at me. Sarah smiled every single time she caught me looking. She wanted a reaction. I refused to give her one. Dinner dragged on. Then Sarah stood up. "Excuse me. I need to feed the baby." She disappeared into another room. As everyone continued talking, I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. That's when I noticed it. Sarah's laptop. Still open. The screen hadn't locked. Normally, I would have walked away. But something inside me said, "Look." Just once. I stepped closer. An email was open. The subject line caught my attention immediately. Natural herbs linked to pregnancy loss. Another email underneath read, "Best supplements to avoid during pregnancy." Then another, "Herbal miscarriage methods." My heart started pounding so hard, I thought everyone in the house could hear it. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone. Click. One picture. Click. Another. Click. As many as I could before the screen changed. Then a voice echoed behind me. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I spun around so fast, I almost dropped my phone. Sarah stood in the doorway, staring at me with a smile that vanished the second she saw the screen in my hand. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then she charged at me. "What the hell are you doing?" she shouted. She lunged for my phone, but I stepped back just in time. "I'm not giving this to you. Delete those pictures." Her nails dug into my wrist as she grabbed my arm. I yanked myself free, but she came at me again. The sound of dishes crashing echoed through the kitchen as we stumbled into the counter. Daniel heard the noise first. He rushed in with several family members right behind him. "What happened?" Sarah instantly let go of me. It was like watching someone flip a switch. Her furious expression disappeared, replaced by fake tears. "She attacked me," Sarah cried. "She was snooping through my private emails." I held up my scratched wrist. "She tried to take my phone." Sarah shook her head dramatically. "She's losing it. I've been telling all of you she's unstable." Daniel looked at my arm. Fresh red scratches ran across my skin. Then he looked at his sister. For the first time in his life, he didn't hesitate. "We're leaving." Sarah stopped crying immediately. The tears vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. "Oh, so you're just going to run away?" Daniel didn't answer. He simply wrapped one arm around my shoulders and led me toward the front door. Behind us, Sarah kept shouting, "Everyone's finally going to see what she's really like." Nobody followed us. The drive home was painfully quiet. When we pulled into the driveway, I unlocked my phone and showed Daniel every picture I'd managed to take. His face became paler with each one. There are dozens of searches. I know. She wasn't just curious. I know. Neither of us slept much that night. The next morning, things got even worse. Sarah published a massive post on her parenting blog. According to her version of events, I'd broken into her kitchen, searched through her personal computer, and attacked her when she confronted me. She even uploaded a photo of a small bruise on her arm. I had never touched her. Not once. It didn't matter. Thousands of people believed her. Comments flooded in by the hundreds. Some called me dangerous. Others insisted I needed psychiatric help. A few even suggested I should be arrested. By lunchtime, my inbox was overflowing with hateful messages. Then my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't ask what happened. Her very first words were, "You need to apologize." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For what? For embarrassing Sarah. I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because I genuinely couldn't process what she had just said. She attacked me. No. She said you attacked her. Mom. Daniel took the phone from my hand. You weren't there. I saw Emma's wrist. I saw Sarah trying to grab her phone. His mother's voice hardened. Sarah sent me the security footage. Daniel frowned. What footage? Her kitchen cameras. Emma was snooping through her laptop. That's all the proof I need. My stomach dropped. Of course. Sarah had cameras. And she had probably edited the video before sending it to everyone. Daniel argued with his mother for several more minutes before ending the call. He looked completely exhausted. She's chosen a side. I know. A few days later, another disaster hit. We received a call from the adoption agency. Months earlier, before my last pregnancy, Daniel and I had quietly started the adoption process. We hadn't told many people. Apparently, Sarah somehow found out. The caseworker sounded polite but concerned. We've received multiple complaints regarding your mental health. I almost dropped the phone. What? There have also been allegations of aggressive behavior. Anonymous emails. Phone calls. Messages. Dozens of them. Someone had launched a coordinated campaign against us. A social worker visited our home that same week. She carefully looked around the house, asked questions, took notes. Finally, she closed her folder. I'll be honest. This doesn't feel like a normal report. It feels personal. I nodded. It is. We provided medical records, character references, employment history, everything they requested. Still, our adoption application was officially placed on hold until the investigation ended. That night, I completely broke down. Sarah hadn't been satisfied with destroying my pregnancies. Now she was trying to destroy my chance of becoming a mother altogether. Daniel held me for what felt like hours. I won't let her win. I promise. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Another parenting blog post. This time, Sarah uploaded screenshots from her kitchen cameras. Just as we'd expected. The footage conveniently began with me standing near her laptop. It ended before she attacked me. Before she scratched me. Before she tried to grab my phone. To everyone watching, I looked guilty. By evening, strangers were demanding that I be arrested for invading her privacy. Some even contacted the adoption agency directly. Our caseworker later admitted they'd received more than 50 complaints in less than 24 hours. It felt like my entire life was collapsing. Then, just when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a name I never expected. Catherine. For a few seconds, I just stared at Catherine's name on my screen. I almost ignored the call. Then something told me to answer. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Emma, please don't hang up. I'm listening. We can't talk on the phone. My pulse immediately picked up. Why? Because if Sarah finds out I called you. She stopped talking. I could hear her breathing. Finally, she spoke again. Meet me at Elm Street Park. Come alone. Please. Before I could ask another question, she hung up. Daniel didn't like the idea. She could be setting you up. I know. But if she really wants to tell us something. He sighed. I'll stay nearby. The next afternoon, I drove to the park. Catherine was already sitting on a bench overlooking the playground. She looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. She kept glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. When I sat beside her, she immediately started crying. I can't do this anymore. What happened? It's Sarah. I know. No. She shook her head. You don't. I stayed quiet. She looked down at her hands. The vitamins. My entire body froze. What about them? She closed her eyes. She made me switch them. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. What did you just say? She told me they were harmless herbal supplements. She said they would calm your anxiety. You believed that. Catherine started crying harder. I wanted to. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I felt sick. So you actually changed my vitamins. She nodded without looking at me. My hands clenched into fists. Why? Because she had something on me. She wiped away her tears. I'd been stealing prescription medication from the pharmacy. Mostly anxiety pills. I have a problem. She found out. And she threatened to report me unless I helped her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you chose to help her instead. I thought. Her voice cracked. I thought it wouldn't hurt you. I swear. I never imagined. She couldn't finish the sentence. Neither of us said anything for nearly a minute. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. Can you tell the police? She immediately shook her head. No. If I testify, I'll lose my license. I'll probably go to prison. I reached for my phone. At least I could record the conversation. The second Catherine noticed, she grabbed my wrist. No. If you record me, I'll deny every word. I only came because I couldn't carry this guilt anymore. She stood up to leave. Then suddenly stopped. There's something else. I looked at her. Sarah isn't finished. What do you mean? Catherine lowered her voice even further. She's been stealing your mail. What? She knows everything about your adoption. Your paperwork. Your caseworker. Even which agency you're using. A chill ran through my entire body. For weeks we'd wondered why important letters kept disappearing. Now we finally had an answer. You have to tell someone, I said. The police. The adoption agency. Anyone. She backed away. I can't. I've already ruined enough lives. Then she turned around and walked away without looking back. I sat on that bench for nearly 20 minutes, trying to process everything I just heard. When I got home, Daniel listened without interrupting. By the time I finished, his face was pale. We're changing everything. That same evening, we installed security cameras around our house. We replaced every lock. We redirected all of our mail to a post office box. Neither of us felt safe anymore. It felt less like protecting our home and more like preparing for war. A week later, Thanksgiving arrived. Neither Daniel nor I wanted to attend dinner with his family. But his mother begged us. "It'll be peaceful. I promise." We should have known better. The moment we walked inside, Sarah greeted everyone like nothing had ever happened. She smiled, hugged relatives, posed for pictures with all 4 of her children. To anyone who didn't know her, she looked like the perfect mother. Dinner dragged on with awkward small talk. Every few minutes, Sarah managed to slip in another passive-aggressive comment. Some people just can't be happy for others. It's sad when jealousy consumes someone's life. Nobody answered her, but nobody told her to stop either. Then, just as dessert was being served, she stood up and tapped her wine glass. "I have another announcement." Everyone looked toward her. She rested one hand on her stomach. "We're expecting again." The room filled with applause. My mother-in-law nearly cried from excitement. Sarah waited until the room quieted down again. Then she smiled directly at me. "And if it's a girl, we've already chosen her name." I already knew I wasn't going to like whatever came next. She smiled even wider. "Margaret." My heart stopped. That was my mother's name. She had passed away only 6 months earlier. It was the last name Sarah hadn't stolen. The last piece of my family she hadn't touched. I slowly stood up. "You wouldn't." She tilted her head. "Why not?" "It's beautiful. And since you aren't using it." The room went completely silent. Every conversation stopped. Even the kids looked up from the table. I stared at Sarah, trying to convince myself I'd heard her wrong. "My mother's name?" I asked quietly. She smiled without a hint of shame. "I've always loved it. You don't get to touch that name." "Oh, come on, Emma. It's just another name." Those 4 words finally broke something inside Daniel. He stood so quickly his chair slammed into the floor. "No." Everyone turned toward him. "You've mocked my wife for years. You stole the names of our babies. You laughed after every miscarriage. And now you're trying to use her mother's name." Sarah rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "No," Daniel replied. "You've been cruel for years, and we kept pretending it was normal." She laughed. "Oh, please. I'm the victim here. You two have been trying to destroy me ever since that stupid laxative a joke." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He simply looked around the room. "Does anyone here honestly believe that?" Nobody answered. Sarah's husband frowned. "What exactly is he talking about?" Sarah immediately interrupted. "Nothing. It's private." "No," I said. "It isn't anymore." For the first time, I told everyone everything. The stolen baby names. The cruel messages. The nursery photos she'd sent after every miscarriage. The captions she'd posted online. The comments she made whenever someone asked about children. The room grew quieter with every sentence. Sarah tried interrupting several times. I didn't stop. When I finished, her husband looked completely stunned. "You did all that?" Sarah folded her arms. "They're exaggerating." Before anyone could say another word, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then quickly locked it. Too quickly. Daniel noticed. "So who are you texting?" "No one." Her husband reached for the phone. She pulled it away. Now everyone was watching. For the first time, Sarah actually looked nervous. Her husband finally took the phone from her. "What are you doing?" He opened the messages. His expression changed instantly. "What?" He kept scrolling. His hands started shaking. "What is this?" He slowly looked at me, then back at Sarah. There were dozens of conversations. Messages with Catherine. Discussions about my prescriptions. Questions about prenatal vitamins. Searches for herbs that could harm a pregnancy. Screenshots from fake social media accounts. Plans to contact the adoption agency. Everything. Sarah tried grabbing the phone back. He stepped away. No. You've lied to everyone. It's not what it looks like. Then explain it. She couldn't. For the first time in years. She had no explanation. Her husband quietly handed the phone to Daniel. Read it. Daniel didn't even make it halfway through before looking sick. One message simply read, "She'll never have a baby after this." Another, "Switch them when she picks up the refill." The room exploded. My father-in-law slammed his fist onto the table. My mother-in-law burst into tears. Sarah kept screaming that everyone was misunderstanding her. Nobody believed her anymore. Her husband looked at her like he was staring at a complete stranger. "I'm filing for divorce." Sarah laughed nervously. "You're joking." "I'm not. You can't leave me." "I already have." Then he looked at their children. "Come here." Every single child walked toward him. None of them went to Sarah. That hurt her more than anything. She looked around the room, waiting for someone to defend her. Nobody moved. She had finally run out of people willing to excuse her behavior. The police arrived less than 30 minutes later. Daniel had already forwarded the messages. Sarah was escorted outside, while still insisting everyone had betrayed her. She kept yelling my name until the patrol car pulled away. The following months moved quickly. Catherine accepted responsibility and cooperated with investigators. Her testimony confirmed everything we'd suspected. The pharmacy records matched. The messages matched. Sarah's own phone matched. The adoption agency reopened our file. Our social worker personally apologized for believing the anonymous complaints. "We've seen harassment cases before," she told us, "but never anything this organized." Several months later, Daniel and I received the call we'd almost stopped dreaming about. A newborn brother and sister needed a family. We didn't hesitate. The day we finalized the adoption felt unreal. As I signed the paperwork, tears kept falling onto the pages. Daniel squeezed my hand. "We made it." We named them Charlotte and James. Not because Sarah had used those names. Because they had always belonged to our hearts. Nobody could ever take that away again. Life slowly became peaceful. The nightmares became less frequent. The house finally sounded the way we'd always imagined. Tiny footsteps. Laughter. Bottles warming in the kitchen. Late-night feedings. Messy toys covering the living room floor. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Sometimes I still think about the babies we lost. I always will. They'll forever be part of our family. But they no longer define my future. Sarah spent years trying to convince me I'd never become a mother. In the end, she lost her family, her marriage, her reputation, her freedom, and I gained everything she'd spent years trying to take away. Looking back now, I realize revenge was never the thing that healed me. Healing came the day I stopped letting Sarah control my story. She thought she was stealing my future. Instead, she destroyed her own. And every evening, when I tuck Charlotte and James into bed and hear them whisper, "Good night, Mom," I remember one simple truth. Kindness takes longer to win than cruelty. But when it finally does, it lasts forever.